Alright, so it's springtime. A lot of you guys are pulling your bikes out of your sheds and garages and out from under tarps and getting them ready for the riding season. Probably a good time to do a tune-up on your motorcycle. I'm not here saying that I know more about your bike than you do, or that I know more about your recommended service intervals. Obviously, your repair manual should come first as your first source for technical information about your motorcycle, but if it has been a while since you've looked at all these things, it might be worth, going down the road and at least checking, if not replacing, these things I'm going to talk about. So today we're going to go over how to do a really exhaustive and thorough tune-up on a motorcycle. First thing that you always want to do is replace the engine oil and filter. Just because your oil is black doesn't mean that it needs to be replaced, but if it's been sitting for a while, or if you can't remember the last time you did it, go ahead and do it. Probably the best piece of advice I can give you about that is to always make sure that you can drain the oil and that you can refill it, that both of these things can, come off and they're not fused to the bike before you do anything. It would be a bad situation if you drain out all your oil and then you find that your filler cap is stuck. I actually knew a guy who had a small Honda, and for some reason his filler cap was welded by the previous owner to his engine. So what he had to do was he took off his seat and he took off his tank and he flipped his bike upside down like it was a bicycle, and it rested on its handlebars, and that's how he filled up his crankcase. Dumbest thing I've ever seen. But make sure that you can get both of these off, because you don't want to drain all your oil and not be able to fill it back up. So drain all your oil, fill it back up with whatever oil you use. Repair manual, obviously, we'll tell you that. You got your oil filter. Mine is just sitting right out there. It looks exactly like a car filter. I buy them on eBay. You can get whatever brand you feel most comfortable with. I haven't put too much thought into it, because, well, for no good reason, actually. So that's that. If you have a liquid-cooled bike, like I do, consider flushing out your radiator fluid. Some guys will use a power flush on their coolant systems. They'll take out their thermostat and they'll use positive pressure liquid to force clean fluid, or sometimes some kind of detergent or whatever, all the way through their motors. I don't do that. Some guys do. It kind of makes me a little bit nervous, but do what you want to do. The way that I flush a coolant system is I'll find the coolant return, which comes in the high side of the radiator, comes in through here under this cover here, high side. I'll take this off and route it to a big bucket. Then come back here, stick a hose in here, and then run the engine and let it cycle through. And it usually takes about 10 or 15 minutes. But you want it to cycle through until whatever's coming out the high side here is all just water. There's no hint of coloring from the coolant. It does take a little while because the water that you're putting in is cool, and so it's going to close your thermostat, and then then you turn off your hose and let it warm up, and then it circles again. But so it does take a little while, but it's a really good way to flush out all the junk. Now's a good time to take out your spark plugs and replace them. Be sure to replace them with quality spark plugs. And I usually use the same brand of spark plug that was in the bike previously, whatever the bike happens to be, or whatever brand it happens to be, because I know that that bike sort of likes that brand. This bike doesn't really like Bosch spark plugs. It muchly prefers NGK. I have no idea why. Other bikes are different. You guys can experiment. Also, assess your spark plug wire boots and make sure they're not cracked and not dirty or anything. You can clean them up and put a little bit of dielectric grease in there to keep them nice and dry, and you're good to go. Assess your brake pads. I just put up a brake pad video, and so I'm not going to go too far in depth to it, but assess your brake pads. Make sure that you've got plenty of meat on them. Your rotors are not scoured or worn. Yeah, make sure everything's, hunky-dory there. Take a tire pressure reading with a tool such as this one or many other styles available at your local auto parts store. You can find what your tire pressure should be, usually printed along the tire, and I always put mine at the maximum. So if it says 35 psi max, I always put them at 35 psi. Also, while you're down here, take a look at your tire tread. See how it's wearing. Make sure that it's wearing evenly. Make sure that you're still far away from the indicator lines. You see right here, I don't know if you can pick it up, but there's this little bump down in there, and when your tire wears down to that bump, that means it's time to replace the tire. Think about a new fuel filter. In my opinion, fuel filters should be replaced about once a season or so. If your bike doesn't have one, I strongly recommend it. It'll definitely take good care of your carbs as your bike starts to age. There are three ways you can go. If you've got a stock fuel filter, and you want to go to Kawasaki and give them, $40 for your, fuel filter, that's up to you. Perfectly acceptable. You can get one of these. This is just a cheapo fuel filter. Works just as well. I buy them by the dozen. They work just fine. This one is cleanable. I think it looks really neat, and so I haven't put it on any bike yet because I just like the look of it. A little glass container there. You unscrew it and take the filter out and clean it up. But yeah, just look at yours, replace them if necessary. Now my bike has hydraulic clutch lines, but if you have cables, now's a good time to assess for cable wear and cable stretch. As you brake and brake and brake, or clutch and clutch, your cable is going to stretch. It's just a function of the cable, it's not a big deal. To compensate for that, you have these little adjusters here. This is the locking nut, and this is the adjuster itself. So if you're finding that your cable's a little bit sloppy, or see how this one is not really returning back to its position, what you can do is sort of unscrew this, and see it pulling it back. You unscrew that until it's where you want it, and then you lock this down. And there are other adjustment points. For example, on this Honda, this clutch cable can also be adjusted down here by adjusting the position of these nuts. So if you're finding that your bike isn't grabbing the clutch like it used to, or not braking like it used to, go ahead and play with the adjustments, and you can very likely firm them up. Take a good look at your forks and fork seals. If you're starting to get pitting in your fork tubes, now's the time to clean that up. You just take some balled up aluminum foil and scrub it up. Take a look down here. If you're seeing any oil or anything, or any kind of infiltration of fluids around here, it might mean that your fork seals are going bad. So now's a good time to replace those. And also, if you have forks like mine, they have this little fitting right in here, and you unscrew this cap here and just put a regular tire pressure gauge on here and see how much pressure is in them. You look in your manual, see what it's recommended. This bike, I think it's like 3 to 5 psi or something really small, so you wouldn't put an air compressor on here. You would fill them up with a bicycle pump, because you put your regular air compressor on there and you'll blow out your fork seals in a second. I keep my forks a little bit firmer because I'm usually carrying other people, or I've got a bunch of luggage, or I just prefer them to be more than factory settings. I do that at my own risk. I've had mine up to 15 or so for the past 6 years, and they haven't blown out or had any negative side effects. But you make the decision that's best for you. Some guys don't use any pressure in their forks at all. They really like the gushy feeling, and that's fine. That's up to them. So that's how you adjust that. If your battery has not been on a tender all winter, it's probably pretty weak. you can try and charge it up, and if it holds a good charge, then it's good to go. If it doesn't, you can try adding a little bit of water or acid to it. Maybe get a couple more months out of it. But typically you should probably just replace it. Also take a look at its date of manufacture. If it's more than 2 years old, 3 years old or something like that, you should just go ahead and replace it. Especially if you live in a colder climate and you rely on this bike a lot. Another thing which you can do while you're in here is take a look at the connections on your starter solenoid. That's this right here. Take these 10mm nuts off, scrub them up with some sandpaper or a file or something, get all the rust out of there and corrosion and stuff, and you'll have a lot easier time starting your bike up. Do a good light test, including all 4 blinkers, headlight, high and low beam, tail light, all that. A lot of times it's easy to ride around for miles and miles and not know that your tail light is out, so now's a good time to check that. If you have a rear differential like I do, now's a good time to change the fluid in there. Same piece of advice applies for pulling off the drainage bolt and the filler bolt. Make sure you can get your filler bolt off before you take your drainage bolt off. Most bikes take just regular 80-90 gear oil. You can look in your repair manual, yada yada. I just put regular stuff in mine and we've been good to go. This may sound kind of dumb, but I think it's good advice. Make sure you have everything on the bike that you think you have on the bike. If you normally carry tools in your saddlebags, make sure they haven't fallen out or you haven't left them somewhere. If you keep your registration under your seat like I do, make sure that it's still there. It's just, it's a real bummer to be pulled over by the cops and be surprised that you've been riding around without your registration all this time. So, make sure all of your assumed qualities of your bike are still true. My air filter is located under my seat, but y'all's might be in any number of other locations. Definitely a good time to take it out and take a look at it. If it doesn't look too dirty, go ahead and put it back in. It's probably good for another season. This one's starting to get a little grimy, so you can probably see down in there. So I'm probably going to replace it soon. But just give it a good visual inspection. If yours has the type that have a lot of baffled paper, go ahead and peel them apart and see if there's gunk accumulating in the valleys down in there. And if so, then probably time to replace it. Or think about getting a K&N. Sometimes you don't have to rejet after K&N, sometimes you do. But they are a little bit more expensive, but they're a better filter and they are washable too. So you can think about that. Now's a good time to think about adjusting your valves, doing a valve job on your bike, especially if it's been a long time since you've done it. My bike I never need to because it's got self-adjusting valves, but if your bike doesn't, then it might be time to get in there and take a look at the shims and measure them. I have one valve adjustment video up, but it's not for very many bikes. It's for older, smaller bikes, and I promise I haven't forgotten about the other one. As soon as I put it up, I'll link it to this video. If your bike has a chain, go ahead and take a look at it as well as the sprocket. You want to adjust the chain for tightness. This one's obviously a little loose. So you want to adjust the tightness. Here's the tensioner right here on this Enduro. You want to make sure there's no rust accumulating. I just put this chain on yesterday. I haven't adjusted it for tightness yet, but I know that this down here isn't rust. It's just gunk from the sprocket, which was kind of rusty. Speaking of sprockets, you want to make sure that these teeth are nice and sharp, and they're not, they don't look like shark fins where they go off, like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. That's a really worn down sprocket. So this one looks pretty good still. Teeth nice and sharp. Be sure to look at your drive sprocket too. There's where the rust is coming from. Yeah, look at all that. But whatever. Yeah, so go ahead and assess that. They might need to be replaced, especially if your chain is stretching. Make sure your master link and the little pin and retainer clip are still in there and still in good shape. go ahead and lubricate it. Yeah. Now's also a good time to take care of any cosmetic things that you want to do before you get out there riding and you start ignoring them. If you have any cracks in your seats, you can go ahead and replace the seat cover. Any scratches in the tank, you can take care of that. Any rust starting to accumulate, it's a good time to really wash and wax your bike. Waxing will protect the chrome and the paint from the elements and dirt and such. And so yeah, whatever you feel like doing is fine. I'm sure you guys can make this decision on your own. But yeah, that's basically everything I can think of at the moment. If you guys have anything to add, go ahead and let me know, and I'll put it in the annotations. But I hope this was an informative video, and you guys have a fun and safe riding season.